Bayou Time Sports is brought to you by Terrible General Health System's Community Sports Institute in conjunction with Barker Honda.
All right, welcome back to another segment here on Bayou Time Sports. I'm with Stan Gravois. We're talking about the inductees for this year's class to the Bayou Region Athletic Hall of Fame, and it's a great class. And Stan, we were talking before, and I want to set the record straight. Anyone who thinks that being in a race car is not athletic needs to get in a race car.
They certainly do.
I mean, just seeing the racers that have come out and talking to Sammy Pizzolato for all these years and just seeing what goes in it, it's quite stressing. And I was in one early in the 80s doing a story. Never did I think that it's that tough on the body. I mean, you got to be ready for this.
It's tough on the body. It's competition at its highest level. It's, man on man, woman on woman. It's let's get it, let's go after it. And I don't think there was ever a question that we were going to have people like this going in. And I'm sort of happy that it's happening because it also preserves our recollection of Southland Dragways to have this individual going in.
And the mental toughness that, the two-tones used to have this thing at the raceway, and we'd all go get in the trucks and race. You could race your buddies and get in those trucks, in those Hemis, and drive them down the track. And I thought 80 was fast, but I went 140, 100, I forget the speed with the Dovers one time. And he said, if you're going to point that camera and try to get some footage, point it at the floor. Because when I start, that camera's coming up. And he was right. So psychologically, you've got to be ready to go that fast.
No, definitely. And can you imagine that our inductee, Leonard Hughes from Candies and Hughes Drag Racing, was going 210 miles an hour in his 70s.
No, I can't imagine.
No, I can't either. I can't either. And, we all grew up knowing what Candies and Hughes was, but we didn't quite understand. Mr. Leonard Hughes from right here in Houma was sort of the heartbeat of that team. Candies was the guy who had the money. Mr. Hughes was the guy who knew how to race. He started off driving, then he moved to being a mechanic, then he became a tuner, which I didn't realize how important tuning was. Listen, look, you see it there. He's actually doing advertisement for Pennzoil, right? Because they were so good. And this is not just locally, this is nationally.
Yeah.
And you mentioned seeing those cars around Houma at one time where they would leave the cars outside the garages. It's amazing that we got to see things like that right here in Houma, and it's because of Mr. Hughes.
And the car looked like that, but I think it was a green one I saw way back.
Oh, is that right?
It may I could be wrong, but I think it was green, but it was just like that.
Well, that's their funny car, obviously, and they were always sponsored by Old Milwaukee. That's when Mark Oswald was actually driving for them. Then they had their top fuel cars, which is the dragsters, and there you see a Candies and Hughes dragster. And they were the best in the world at this, and it was a lot in due part to Mr. Hughes. There you see him with the glasses on, and you see Mr. Candies. And listen, to think that a lot of people in our area didn't know that. We inducted a bowler a couple of years ago, and a lot of people didn't realize we had a bowler from Houma who bowled against, Earl Anthony and Pete Weber and people like that. That's the same thing I think we're going to see with the racing. Not just what happened at Southland Drags either. This is national.
But the respect they got on the national circuit, it would be like, Irvin Johnson talking about Michael Jordan. It would be the same thing with Candies and Hughes. Wherever you went in the racing world and you mentioned their name and talked to the Teutons and the Pizzolatos, everyone knew who that was.
I used to have a little Hot Wheels, the Candies and Hughes Hot Wheel. You remember they used to have the snake and the mongoose and all of that? That's all who these guys raced against, and they were better than that. They won the national championships multiple times. They set speed records in 1968. They came back in 1970 and set another speed record. And listen, this is not like jet cars that go on the salt flats over in Utah or whatever. It's a quarter-mile drag strip. But when you're going a quarter of a mile in 7.6 seconds, that's amazing. That's amazing. And this is where it started, right here in Houma.
We talk about other sports and other inductees, and for guys like Robert Brunet and Art Cantrell, go to school, they give you shoulder pads, they give you a helmet, and if you're good, you could play. with Leonard Hughes, we talking, I'm gonna say millions of dollars to get in that car and do this.
Ground up. You have to be innovative. You have to figure out a new way to get a tenth of a second out of a car. You got to figure out all of these things. So, yeah, I think it's impressive. I think, you know, they have these induction videos that go in with these guys. Again, they're going to be inducted in June. I can't wait to hear some of the stories on just how we did this, how we manipulated this to get this out of this. Again, Mr. Hughes is living with his wife, Judy, still here in the Houma area in his early to mid 80s, and it's going to be fun to hear the stories.
You know, and just going back and watching the pit crews, and they say you haven't lived until you've been to one of these races live, because what you see on TV, even on a football game, is sort of slowed down. You see it through a lens, but when you're ground level and you hearing it and you seeing it, they say it's incredible.
Better bring your earplugs.
Yeah,
Better bring your earplugs.
All right, so Leonard Hughes is one of those inductees, and we have a few more. Keep watching these segments because they're unbelievable, well-deserving individuals going into the Hall of Fame. We'll take a break. We'll be right back with more.